All right, guys, welcome. It is Flex Day number 2, Tuesday the 24th. This is your first assignment doing the notes, and then there's some stuff in Canvas that you can do afterwards. Remember, we're talking about contracts and genuine assent. We talked about that yesterday. We looked at duress, forcing somebody into a contract, the 4 types of duress. We looked at undue influence. And what that means. And so today, we're going to talk about mistake, misrepresentation, and fraud. Make the screen bigger. So mistake is a mistake. It's an accident. Get back over here. Sometimes in contract law, or in contracts, or in life, really, people are going to mess up. So you make a mistake. So you, in a contract, you accidentally thought that the car was a 1979 and it wasn't accurate, okay, or something like that. Generally, mistakes are categorized as either a unilateral or a mutual mistake. Okay, so you're going to need to know that. Unilateral, meaning one, so that happens when only one party holds an incorrect belief about the facts or law related to the contract. Generally, this does not affect the validity of the contract. Okay, a mistake, basically, one of the biggest or best examples of a unilateral mistake is failing to read a contract. When one person signs something without without fully reading it or failing to read, that's the best example of a unilateral mistake. Mutual mistake, also known as a bilateral mistake, or when both parties have an incorrect belief about an important fact. Okay, these important facts, when we talk about contract law, are called material facts. Okay, so things you'll need to know: unilateral mistake, mistake made by one party. Most common example of that is failure to read the contract thoroughly or completely. Excuse me. Then you have a mutual mistake, which is a mistake made by both parties. And again, usually a mistake or an incorrect belief about an important fact within the contract. And in contract law, important facts, those are called material facts. Okay, material facts. Something to keep in mind, if the mutual mistake or the bilateral mistake of fact is to the identity of the subject matter, the contract is void. So, for example, if a buyer and seller, if they both think that a property is 41 acres, they get into a contract based on that, and then they learn that it's only 28 acres, the mutual mistake of fact as to the identity of the subject matter makes their agreement not binding. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but to you, but just understand that material facts are those important facts within a contract. Okay. Next one is misrepresentation. There are 2 types of this. Innocent and fraudulent misrepresentation, and I'm gonna put fraudulent misrepresentation with fraud. Okay. Excuse me. So if we say, when we look at misrepresentation, we are only going to look at the innocent misrepresentation. So this is when you made an untrue statement about the material fact. So this is going back to what I was saying earlier. If you honestly believed that the truck that you were selling was a 1979, and it was actually a 78, okay, then that was innocent misrepresentation. Okay, it's different than a mistake. Okay, misrepresentation is when you talk about one of the material facts, thinking that was accurate. Okay, there are two things that statements or two, I don't want to say examples that are treated as misrepresentation. Okay, the untrue, here's number one. You'll need to know this. The untrue statement is one of fact or there is active concealment. In this case, we're not going to talk about active concealment until we get to fraud. Okay, so the untrue statement is one of fact. Okay, you said or wrote down on the contract it was a 1979 when in fact it's not true, it was a 78. Okay, and then number 2, the statement is material to the transaction. Okay, now what that means is that the seller or the buyer is entering into that contract based on the information that you give them, based on the fact that the truck was a 1979 whatever. Okay, it is material or important to the actual contract. Okay, so that's innocent misrepresentation. Again, statements are treated as misrepresentation by the law only if, number 1, the untrue statement is one of fact, and then number 2, the statement is material to the transaction. Okay. Now, fraud is very similar to misrepresentation, but this is when it's done on purpose. This is when you purposely misrepresent something for your financial gain. Okay. It's defined as misrepresentation with 2 additional elements. Number 1, so going back to misrepresentation, fraud, an untrue statement is one of fact. Number 2, the statement is material to the transaction. Okay, and now here's what separates fraud from misrepresentation. Number 1, that the misstatement or the misrepresentation was made recklessly or intentionally. So it was done on purpose. I purposely knew that it was a 78, or I knew that it was a 78, and I purposely said it was a 79 because maybe I could get more money or something. Okay. And number 2, that injury resulted. Remember, injury is not just physical, medical injury. Somebody buying, like let's say 79 was some rare year for this particular vehicle or whatever, and you buy it for a premium, a larger amount than you would if it was a 78. You are injured because you've overpaid. Okay, you're out all that money that you paid for a 79, or you're thinking that it was a 79, and in fact it was a 78. Okay, so again, it had fraud has those 2 elements that misrepresentation has, but then in addition, okay, to make it fraud, it has to be done, number 1, either recklessly or intentionally, and then number 2, injury occurs as a result of that. Okay, now when we look at remedies for fraud, okay, rescission, there's 2 remedies for fraud, rescission and damages. So rescission, you get, if you remember from yesterday, you get what you put into the contract, and then on top of that, you'll also be awarded damages if fraud is proven. Okay, so test question, what are the remedies for fraud? Number 1, rescission. Number 2, damages. Okay, those are the notes for today. Go to the modules section. One of the most common examples of fraud is this thing called the Ponzi scheme. Some of you have probably heard it before, but it came from or was named after a guy named Charles or Carlos Ponzi. Was an Italian immigrant. You're going to learn a little bit about that and what a Ponzi scheme is in the assignment. So head over to the module section. Email me if you have any questions. If not, I will see you tomorrow.